The thing about warriors who brag is that they never know when to shut up. Cragthor the Unyielding, 7 feet of emerald scales and bad attitude, had been talking for the past 45 minutes, non-stop. The crew of the merchant vessel Profit Margin had learned to tune him out somewhere around minute 12, which was roughly when he started describing his 37th confirmed kill in excruciating detail. And then, Cragthor continued, flexing his claws for emphasis, I ripped the plasma cannon from the Vrelian battlemech with my bare hands and used it to destroy their command ship. The explosion was visible from 3 planets away. Captain Ven, a sleek Avarian with blue-gray feathers and the patience of a saint, didn't even look up from her datapad. Fascinating. Hey Marcus, what's for dinner tonight? Marcus Webb, the ship's human cook, poked his head out from the galley doorway. He was average height for a human, which made him short compared to most of the crew, with dark hair and the kind of unremarkable face that you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting him. Thinking about doing a stir-fry. Got some fresh vegetables at the last station. That work for everyone? A chorus of approval rang out from the crew scattered around the common area. Pip, the ship's engineer, a 6-legged insectoid who was perpetually anxious about everything from engine fluctuations to the heat death of the universe, chittered happily. Oh, thank the hive mind. Your cooking is the only thing keeping me from a nervous breakdown. That's not true, Captain Ven said without missing a beat. The medication I prescribed is also helping. Fair point, Captain. Cragthor's tail thumped against the floor with irritation. Are you all seriously ignoring my tale of glorious combat to discuss vegetables? Yes, replied Ven simply. Absolutely, added Grex, the Quarian navigator, a blob-like being who occupied a specialized mobility tank. We've heard about your 247 confirmed kills approximately 247 times. We get it. You're very scary. You fear nothing. You'd fight a supernova if it had the audacity to go off near you. 248 kills, Cragthor corrected, his voice dripping with wounded pride. And it wasn't a supernova, it was a black hole, and I said I'd fight it if it looked at me wrong. Marcus emerged fully from the galley, carrying several bags of groceries that he'd picked up during their last supply run. Excuse me, just need to get past you, Craig. The massive Draxian warrior didn't budge, forcing Marcus to navigate around him. The human did so without complaint, humming something under his breath as he disappeared back into his domain. Veth, Cragthor announced, pointing at the galley door, is exactly what I mean about soft species. Look at him. Small, weak, fragile skin with no natural armor whatsoever. No claws, no fangs worth mentioning, no venom sacs. How did humans ever survive on their planet? They're prey animals at best. The room got very quiet very fast. Captain Ven slowly set down her datapad. Crag, I'm going to give you some free advice. Don't finish that thought. Why not? I'm simply stating facts. Humans are biologically inferior for combat. They have none of the natural advantages that real warriors possess. They're soft, they're slow, and they're weak. I could snap that little cook in half without breaking a sweat. Pip's antennae drooped with what could only be described as second-hand embarrassment. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. What? Cragthor demanded. Am I wrong? Can any of you honestly tell me that humans are warriors? Grex bubbled thoughtfully in their tank. Define warrior. A being bred for combat, a creature that strikes fear into the hearts of their enemies. Someone like me, who has faced death 1,000 times and never retreated. Someone who fears nothing. Nothing? Captain Ven asked, one feathered eyebrow raised. Nothing, Cragthor confirmed, puffing out his chest. The scales there were decorated with battle scars that he'd deliberately never had healed, each one a trophy. I am Draxian. We are apex predators. We conquered our world through strength and will alone. In all my years of military service, I have never once felt the weakness of fear. Not even that time with the space jellyfish? Pip asked quietly. That was tactical concern, not fear. There's a difference. You screamed for 16 minutes straight. Tactical screaming. Captain Ven sighed the sigh of someone who'd had this conversation too many times. Craig, just for the record, you've never actually fought humans, have you? The warrior paused. Well, no. The Drakian Empire hasn't had any conflicts with Earth or its colonies. But I've studied the combat reports from other species. Humans use technology to compensate for their physical weakness. Without their weapons and armor, they're nothing. Right? Ven said slowly. Nothing. That's definitely the word I'd use. From the galley came the sound of Marcus chopping vegetables with impressive speed and precision. the knife hitting the cutting board in a rapid rhythm that somehow sounded almost threatening if you thought about it too hard. Cragthor's ear slits twitched. What is he doing in there? Probably making dinner, Grex offered. You know, the thing we were discussing before you interrupted with your humble brag? I wasn't humble bragging, there was nothing humble about it. I was simply bragging. I've earned the right. Cragthor stood to his full impressive height. In fact, I could take on any member of this crew in single combat and emerge victorious. That's not arrogance, that's statistical probability based on my training and experience. Even Marcus? Pip asked, antennae perking up with sudden interest. Especially Marcus. The human would be the easiest fight of my life. Captain Ven and Grex exchanged a look that spoke volumes. The kind of look that said, well, he's going to learn something today, isn't he? You know what? Ven said, a smile playing at the edges of her beak. Why don't you join us for dinner tonight, Crag? Marcus always makes extra. It'll be a good opportunity for you to get to know our cook better. Cragthor waved a dismissive claw. I don't need to know him better. I already know everything I need to know. But fine. I'll attend your meal. It would be rude to refuse. How considerate of you, Ven said dryly. Marcus's voice drifted from the galley, cheerful and oblivious. Dinner'll be ready at 1800 hours. Hope everyone comes hungry. I'm trying out a new recipe tonight. Cragthor settled back into his seat, already bored with the conversation. He had no idea that he'd just accepted an invitation that would fundamentally change his understanding of fear. But he'd figure that out soon enough. 1800 came faster than Cragthor expected. Probably because he'd spent most of the afternoon in the ship's training room demolishing practice dummies and thinking about how impressive he was. It was his favorite hobby. The common area had been transformed into something resembling a dining hall, with the crew gathered around the main table. Marcus had outdone himself. The spread was impressive, at least by merchant vessel standards. Various dishes steamed invitingly, filling the air with aromas that even Cragthor's carnivore-alented senses found appealing. There he is, Marcus said cheerfully, gesturing to an empty seat. Saved you a spot, big guy. Fair warning, I wasn't sure what Draxan dietary requirements were, so I played it safe with high-protein options. Cragthor settled into the reinforced chair with a grunt. I can eat anything. Draxian digestive systems are designed to process even toxic substances. It's an evolutionary advantage. Neat, Marcus said, and he sounded genuinely interested. So like, no allergies or anything? Allergies are a weakness my species eliminated millennia ago. Must be nice. I knew a guy back on Earth who couldn't eat peanuts without his throat closing up. Made birthday parties real exciting. Marcus started passing dishes around. Okay, so we've got garlic butter shrimp, spicy beef stir-fry, kung pao chicken, and for anyone feeling adventurous, I made some real authentic Sichuan hot pot. Pip's antennae recoiled. How authentic are we talking? Let's just say I had to sign a waiver to buy some of these peppers at the station, Marcus grinned. But don't worry, I made a mild version too. Captain Ven was already loading her plate. Marcus joined us about 6 months ago, she said to Cragthor, making conversation. We picked him up at Waystation 7 after our last cook quit. Quit? Cragthor asked, accepting a plate of the beef stir-fry. It smelled acceptable. Retired, technically, Grex burbled. Decided he wanted to open a restaurant on Theta Prime. Can't really blame him. This job doesn't pay nearly enough for the quality of cuisine we demand. Marcus laughed. You guys aren't that demanding, though I appreciate that you actually eat what I make, unlike my last gig. He sat down with his own plate, loaded with the spicy options. Worked on a Zentari pleasure cruise for a while. Those folks only ate synthesized nutrient paste. Very efficient, absolutely no soul. Why did you leave Earth? Cragthor asked, more out of obligation than genuine curiosity. He took a bite of the stir-fry and immediately regretted his earlier confidence. It was spicy. Very spicy. Not painful, not yet, but definitely more heat than he'd anticipated. Oh, you know, wanted to see the galaxy, meet new species, learn about different cultures, Marcus shrugged. Earth's great and all, but humanity's got that whole explorer gene thing going on. We get restless. Plus, turns out cooking is pretty universal. Everyone needs to eat, and everyone appreciates when it tastes good. Humans are wanderers, Pip offered, already halfway through his mild portion. I read about it in a xenobiology text. Something about your evolution as persistence hunters made you really good at long-distance travel and adaptation. Persistence hunters? Cragthor asked, reaching for his water. His tongue was starting to tingle. Oh yeah, Marcus said brightly, ancient human hunting strategy. We'd just follow prey animals for hours, sometimes days, until they literally collapsed from exhaustion. We're not fast, but we've got stamina for days, and really good temperature regulation. Most animals on Earth would overheat way before we did. Cragthor processed this information while his mouth continued to burn. That seems inefficient? Super inefficient, Marcus agreed. But it worked. We walked everything to death. Very metal when you think about it. You need more beef? Captain Ven asked Cragthor innocently. You're sweating a bit. I'm fine, Cragthor insisted, even though his scales were definitely changing to a lighter shade of green, which happened when Draxians experience physical stress. The spice level is manageable. Is it though? Grex asked. Because you look like you're about to molt. I said I'm fine. Marcus pushed the hot pot toward him. Want to try the authentic stuff? No pressure, but I promise, it's an experience. Pride was a funny thing. Pride made warriors do incredibly stupid things, like accept challenges they should absolutely decline. Cragthor looked at the bubbling red oil of the hot pot, noted the warning expression on Captain Ven's face, processed the fact that every logical instinct was telling him to refuse, and then heard himself say, "Of course, I fear nothing, remember?" Cool, Marcus said, ladling a generous portion onto Cragthor's plate. Pro tip, the numbing sensation is normal. That's the Sichuan peppercorns. They make your mouth feel tingly. The first bite was a revelation. Not a good one. It was like someone had weaponized flavor and targeted his taste buds specifically. The heat hit first, then the numbing sensation Marcus had mentioned, then more heat, then flavors he couldn't even identify through the pain. Good, right? Marcus asked, eating his own portion with the casual ease of someone who'd built up a tolerance over years. Cragthor couldn't speak. His throat had decided to close up in protest. This was worse than the time he'd been hit with a chemical weapon on Vraxis 4. At least then, he'd been wearing a helmet. Pip was watching with fascination. His scales are turning yellow now. I didn't know they could do that. Perfectly normal reaction. Cragthor wheezed, reaching for more water. The water did nothing. If anything, it made it worse. Oh, water doesn't help with capsaicin, Marcus said helpfully. That's the compound that makes peppers spicy. It's oil-based, so water just spreads it around. You want milk or bread? Why didn't you mention that before? Cragthor gasped. I mean, I figured a warrior who fears nothing wouldn't need the warning. Marcus's expression was perfectly innocent. Want some milk? No, Cragthor said, because pride was still making decisions for him apparently. I can handle this. The rest of the meal was an exercise in suffering. Cragthor ate every bite on his plate because retreating now would mean admitting defeat, and Draxan warriors did not admit defeat to vegetables, or peppers, or whatever capsaicin-laden nightmare Marcus had conjured. By the time dinner ended, Cragthor's scales had cycled through several colors, and his tail had gone completely numb. The crew was chatting pleasantly, completely unaffected, while he felt like his entire head was on fire from the inside. That was amazing, Marcus, Captain Ven said, standing to help clear plates. You really outdid yourself. Thanks, Captain. Hey, Crag, you okay? You look a little rough. Fine, Cragthor managed. Just fine. Delicious meal. Very enjoyable. Glad you liked it. Marcus started collecting dishes. Tomorrow I'm thinking about doing something with meat. Got some really nice cuts at the station. Gonna need to do some prep work tonight, though. Prep work? Cragthor asked, his voice still hoarse. Yeah, you know, butchering, trimming, marinating, the usual, Marcus smiled. I love working with meat. Very satisfying, you know? There's an art to it. Something about the way he said it made Cragthor's combat instincts twitch, but that was ridiculous. The human was talking about cooking. Well, Cragthor said, standing on shaky legs, I should return to my quarters. Thank you for the meal. Anytime, big guy. See you tomorrow. As Cragthor left, he overheard Pip whisper to Grex, Do you think he knows? Knows what? Grex burbled back. That Marcus was being nice. Imagine if he'd actually tried to make something challenging. Their laughter followed Cragthor down the corridor, and for the first time in his military career, he wondered if he'd just lost a battle without even realizing they'd been fighting. The next evening, Cragthor returned to the common area with something to prove. He'd spent the day researching human cuisine and had convinced himself that last night was a fluke. He was a Draxian warrior. He would not be defeated by food twice. Marcus had set up another impressive spread, though this time it featured various meat dishes. The smells were incredible, rich and savory, and Cragthor felt his confidence returning. Evening, Crag, Marcus said, wiping his hands on his apron. Feeling better today. I felt fine yesterday, Cragthor lied. Sure you did. Your scales totally didn't turn yellow. Marcus gestured to the table. Tonight's all about meat. Figured I'd showcase some different preparation methods. We've got grilled steaks, slow-roasted pork, braised short ribs, and, my personal favorite, Carolina pulled pork with 3 different hot sauces. Cragthor eyed the hot sauces suspiciously. How spicy? Well, that depends on which one you choose. This one's mild, this one's medium, and this one, Marcus held up a bottle with a skull on the label, is what we call a mistake waiting to happen. It's made with ghost peppers and regret. I'll have that one, Cragthor announced. Captain Ven didn't even look up from her plate. Of course you will. The meal started well enough. The meat was excellent, perfectly cooked and seasoned. Cragthor was just beginning to think he'd misjudged the human when he tried the pulled pork with the ghost pepper sauce. It was a mistake. Marcus had not been exaggerating about the regret. So Crag, Marcus said conversationally while Cragthor's eyes watered. Captain mentioned you're quite the warrior. 248 confirmed kills, right? Cragthor couldn't respond because his mouth had achieved a new state of manner that existed only in pain. I mean, that's impressive and all, but I gotta ask, Marcus continued. What do you actually do on this ship? We're a merchant vessel. Not a lot of combat happening in the shipping industry. Security, Cragthor wheezed, reaching for the milk that Pip had thoughtfully placed within reach. Pride could only take him so far. Right, security. Makes sense. Marcus took a bite of his own heavily sauced pork without flinching. Though, honestly, in 6 months, the most dangerous thing we've encountered was that one station inspector who tried to fine us for improper cargo labeling. Captain Ven handled that with strongly worded email. Grex bubbled with laughter. Remember when Crag offered to handle it physically, and Ven had to explain that assault carries significant legal penalties? I was offering tactical options, Cragthor protested weakly. You threatened to throw him out an airlock. A tactical airlock deployment. Marcus grinned. See, that's the thing about humans. We don't really do the whole warrior culture thing anymore. I mean, we did for like thousands of years, but we got bored of it. Now we channel all that aggression into really weird stuff like competitive cooking shows and extreme sports. Sounds weak, Cragthor managed, though his conviction was wavering along with his vision. Maybe, Marcus said with a shrug, or maybe we just found more interesting things to do with our time than measuring who can kill what. Like, I could probably kill something if I had to, but I'd rather make it delicious, you know? There was something unsettling about the casual way he said that. Cragthor's combat training was suddenly sending him warning signals he didn't quite understand. The meal continued, with Cragthor stubbornly finishing everything on his plate, while his scales cycled through increasingly distressing colors. By the end, he felt like he'd survived a chemical warfare attack. That was great, Marcus, Captain Ven said. What's on the menu for tomorrow? Thinking I'll do something special. Got this beautiful cut of meat that needs proper attention. Marcus started clearing plates. Gonna need to do some prep work tonight. Really looking forward to it. What kind of prep? Cragthor asked, not sure why he was asking. Oh, you know, the usual. Trimming, deboning, getting the knives ready. Marcus smiled. I'm very particular about my knives. Can't do good work with dull blades. He disappeared into the galley, and moments later, a sound filled the common area. The unmistakable sound of blade on whetstone, that distinctive ringing scrape of steel being sharpened. Cragthor felt something cold settle in his stomach, and it wasn't the ghost pepper sauce. Marcus takes his cooking very seriously, Pip offered, noticing Cragthor's expression. He sharpens his knives every night, says a chef's tools are his pride. The sharpening continued, rhythmic and precise. Marcus was humming something cheerful while he worked. I should go, Cragthor said suddenly. You haven't had dessert yet, Captain Ven said innocently. Marcus made something special. I'm full. Since when has that stopped you? Grex asked. You have 3 stomachs. Marcus emerged from the galley, carrying a tray of what looked like small cakes. In his other hand, he held a large chef's knife, the blade gleaming with fresh sharpness. Almost forgot dessert. These are little meat pies, actually. Savory, not sweet. Made them with the leftover trimmings from earlier. He set down the tray and began cutting the pies with smooth, practiced motions. The knife sliced through the crust like it wasn't even there. You're very good with that knife, Cragthor observed, his voice sounding strange even to his own ears. Thanks, Marcus said brightly, making eye contact while he worked. The blade never wavered. Spent a lot of time practicing. There's a real art to butchery, you know. Knowing exactly where to cut, how much pressure to apply, which angle gives you the cleanest separation. It's all about understanding anatomy. Anatomy, Cragthor repeated. Oh yeah, can't prepare meat properly if you don't understand the muscle structure, the connective tissue, where the bones sit. Marcus plated a slice and offered it to Cragthor. Every species is different, of course. I've had to learn a lot since leaving Earth. The techniques vary wildly depending on the animal. Cragthor took the plate mechanically. You've prepared many different species? Of meat, sure. I mean, not sentient species, obviously, Marcus laughed. Though I gotta admit, I'm curious about the variations, from a purely academic standpoint, like, I wonder if your physiology would require different cooking methods. Those scales look pretty tough. Would probably need a good marinade to break down the muscle fibers, get 'em tender. The room had gone very quiet. Are you, Cragthor said slowly, asking me how I would taste? Marcus blinked. What? No, I'm just thinking out loud about theoretical cooking methods. It's a professional curiosity thing. I do it all the time. He really does, Pip confirmed. Last week he spent 20 minutes discussing whether Grex would be more like oysters or jello. For the record, I found it fascinating, Grex burbled. Marcus sat down with his own slice of pie, still holding the knife. Anyway, the key to good cooking is freshness. Fresh ingredients, fresh techniques, always keeping your skills sharp. He gestured with the knife for emphasis. You let your edge get dull, your work suffers. Same principle probably applies to combat, right? Right, Cragthor said faintly. I mean, I wouldn't know. Never been in a real fight. But I imagine it's similar. Stay sharp, stay ready, always be prepared to do what needs doing. Marcus took a bite of his pie. These turned out great. You really can use every part of the animal if you're creative enough. My grandmother taught me that. She always said, Marcus, waste is a sin. When something dies to feed you, you honor it by using everything. There was something deeply unsettling about the way he said that while making direct eye contact. Speaking of which, Marcus continued, I've been meaning to ask you, Craig, what do Draxians actually eat? Like on your homeworld? I'm genuinely curious about your dietary traditions. Meat, Cragthor said. We eat meat. Just meat? No vegetables? No variety? We are apex predators. We conquered our world through hunting. Interesting. Marcus smiled, and it was a perfectly friendly smile that somehow made Cragthor's scales prickle. So you understand the hunter-prey dynamic pretty well then. The psychology of it. The patience, the strategy, the moment when the prey realizes what's happening. Yes, Cragthor said carefully. Must be hard, being a hunter on a ship like this. No real outlet for those instincts. Marcus gestured around, with the knife still in hand. Me, I get to channel everything into cooking. Hunting ingredients at stations, tracking down rare spices, breaking down proteins. It's very satisfying. Therapeutic, even. Captain Van was watching the exchange with barely concealed amusement. I should mention, Marcus added thoughtfully, humans did most of our evolution as both predator and prey. We hunted, but we were also hunted. Made us really good at pattern recognition, threat assessment, understanding behavioral cues. It's why we're so good at reading body language across species, survival adaptation. Fascinating, Cragthor said, not finding it fascinating at all. Yeah, my xenobiology professor back on Earth was really into it. Talked a lot about how humans are basically persistence predators with anxiety disorders and tool-building capabilities. Weird combination, but it worked out. Marcus finally set down the knife to eat properly. Anyway, this has been great. Really enjoyed getting to know you better, Crag. We should do this more often. Yes, Cragthor lied. More often. As he left the common area 20 minutes later, Cragthor could still hear the sound of knife sharpening coming from the galley. Marcus had gone back to his prep work, humming that same cheerful tune. For the first time in his military career, Cragthor the Unyielding felt something he didn't have a name for. Something cold and instinctive that his warrior training had never prepared him for. It would be several hours before he'd be willing to admit that it might be fear. Cragthor did not sleep well. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the sound of sharpening knives. When he finally did drift off, he dreamed of Marcus's smile and the casual way he'd discussed anatomy and cooking techniques while making direct eye contact. At 300 hours, Cragthor gave up on sleep entirely and went to the ship's database room. If he was going to be awake, he might as well be productive. He told himself he was just doing routine research, nothing more. Certainly not spiraling. He pulled up the file on humans and started reading. 5 minutes later, he regretted everything. Humans, it turned out, were terrifying, not in the obvious way like Draxians with their scales and claws and military tradition. Humans were terrifying in ways that his warrior culture had never prepared him for. They were persistence hunters who could track prey for days without stopping. Their bodies were built for endurance, with more stamina than species twice their size. They could regulate their temperature through sweat, which meant they could literally run their prey to death in hot environments. They were also one of the only species on their planet that could throw objects with deadly accuracy. Something about their shoulder structure and hand-eye coordination made them natural marksmen. They'd weaponized throwing before they'd even developed language. And they were omnivores. True omnivores. They could eat almost anything organic and extract nutrients from it. Their home world was full of things that would kill most species, and humans had looked at all of it and thought, I wonder how that tastes. Cragthor scrolled further, his scales slowly shifting to a pale, sickly green. Humans had thrived in every environment on their planet. Deserts, tundras, jungles, mountains. They'd spread across their world like a biological inevitability, adapting and surviving and eating everything they encountered. They'd domesticated predators and turned them into pets. They'd looked at massive prey animals and invented tools specifically to kill them. Then there was the section on human psychology. They were one of the few species that actively enjoyed fear as entertainment. They created horror stories, scary movies, haunted houses, all designed to trigger their own fear responses for fun. What kind of species did that? And perhaps most disturbing, humans were social pack hunters, with a documented history of strategic thinking and long-term planning. When they wanted something, they were patient, methodical. They'd wait for the right moment, set the perfect trap, and strike when their target least expected it. Oh no, Cragthor muttered to himself. Oh no, what? Asked a voice behind him. Cragthor nearly jumped out of his scales. Pip had entered the database room on his 6 quiet legs, antennae twitching with concern. Nothing, Cragthor said quickly. Just research. At 3 in the morning? Pip skittered closer, looking at the screen. Oh, you're reading about humans. Yeah, they're pretty wild, right? I'm simply educating myself about my crewmates. Sure, nothing to do with how you've been acting weird since dinner. Pip's antennae tilted knowingly. Marcus really got in your head, didn't he? That's absurd. The human is a cook. He poses no threat. Right, no threat. That's why you're down here at 3 a.m. reading about human hunting strategies. Cragthor closed the file with more force than necessary. I fear nothing. Uh-huh. Pip was quiet for a moment, then added, You know, Marcus told me something interesting when he first joined. We were talking about Earth, and I asked him what he did before becoming a ship's cook. He said he used to go on these things called hunting trips. Said it was about connecting with nature, understanding where your food comes from. Very hands-on, apparently. Hunting trips, Cragthor repeated slowly. Yeah, he was really passionate about it. Talked about tracking, field dressing, all that stuff. Said you have to use every part of the animal out of respect. Pip's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. He also mentioned that humans have been cooking for so long that it's basically part of their evolution. Something about how fire and cooked meat actually changed their brain development, made them smarter. Cragthor felt his scales prickle. Why are you telling me this? No reason. Just making conversation. Pip started to leave, then paused at the doorway. Oh, one more thing. Did you know humans have this whole subculture around knives? Like, collecting them, learning about different types, maintaining them? Marcus has this whole case of them in his quarters. Different blades for different purposes. Deboning knives, butcher knives, cleavers. He showed me once. Very impressive. Very sharp. That's perfectly normal for a cook, Cragthor said, his voice higher than intended. Oh, totally normal. Super normal. Nothing weird about a guy who really loves his knife collection and knows exactly how to use each one. Pip's antennae waved innocently. Anyway, I'm going back to bed. You should too. Big day tomorrow. Marcus said he's making something special for dinner. After Pip left, Cragthor sat alone in the darkness, staring at the closed database file. He pulled it back up and kept reading, unable to stop himself. Humans, he learned, had a concept called the uncanny valley, a psychological response to things that appeared almost but not quite human. It was a threat detection mechanism, which implied that at some point in their evolution, there had been things that looked almost human but weren't, and humans had needed to identify them quickly. What had they been running from on that planet? Or more disturbingly, what had been pretending to be them? He found a section on human cuisine. The variety was staggering. Humans had culinary traditions that involved fermentation, curing, smoking, aging. They would deliberately let food rot in controlled ways to make it taste better. They ate things that would kill most species. Capsaicin peppers, caffeine, alcohol, cyanide containment plants that they'd figured out how to process safely. There was a whole subsection on exotic meats. Humans throughout their history had eaten virtually every animal on their planet. When they'd run out of conventional options, they'd gotten creative. There were documented cases of extreme survival situations where humans had resorted to eating, well, anything available. Cragthor's mind went to places he didn't want it to go. He closed the database again, but the damage was done. He'd read enough. More than enough. The ship's lights were still dimmed for night cycle, and in the quiet corridors Cragthor could swear he heard something from the direction of the galley, the soft sound of someone working, the occasional clink of metal on metal. Marcus was probably just doing prep work. That's all it was. Innocent prep work for tomorrow's meal. But Cragthor's instincts, honed through years of military service, were screaming at him now. Every warrior knew how to recognize a predator. It was in the way they moved, the way they watched, the patience in their eyes. Marcus had all of it. He'd just been too friendly, too normal, too human for Cragthor to see it before. But now, with his research fresh in his mind and sleep deprivation making everything worse, Cragthor couldn't unsee it. The human wasn't afraid of him, had never been afraid of him. Why would he be? To Marcus, Cragthor wasn't a legendary warrior with 248 confirmed kills. To Marcus, Cragthor was probably just interesting, in a professional curiosity sort of way. I am Draxian, Cragthor whispered to himself in the darkness. I am a warrior. I have faced death 1,000 times. I fear nothing. But the conviction in those words was gone, and he knew it. Somewhere in the galley, Marcus hummed cheerfully while sharpening his knives, and Cragthor realized that fear wasn't about what was actually dangerous. Fear was about facing something you didn't understand, something that operated by rules you'd never learned. And right now, in the darkness of a merchant vessel in deep space, Cragthor understood nothing at all about the friendly human cook who knew too much about anatomy and really loved his job. By morning, Cragthor had made a decision. He was a warrior. Warriors did not hide from threats. They confronted them directly. He found Marcus in the galley at 800 hours, exactly where he expected. The human was humming again, working at a prep station with several large cuts of meat laid out before him. His knife collection was on full display, each blade gleaming and perfectly maintained. Morning, Crag, Marcus said without looking up. You're up early. Want some coffee? We need to talk, Cragthor announced, planting himself in the doorway to establish dominance. It was a classic intimidation tactic. Block the exit, take up space, project power. Marcus just smiled and kept working. Sure, pull up a seat. I'm just doing some butchering, but I can multitask. That was not the response Cragthor wanted. He tried again. I know what you are. A cook? Marcus selected a deboning knife and began separating meat from bone with unsettling precision. Yeah, that's usually what people know me as. You're a predator. I mean, technically all humans are, yeah. Omnivores, but we lean carnivore. Marcus held up a strip of meat to examine it. This is really nice quality. Got it from that Vorail trader at the last station. He knows his stuff. Cragthor's tail lashed in frustration. Stop being so casual about this. About what? Cooking? Marcus finally looked up, genuinely confused. Crag, are you okay? You look terrible. Did you sleep last night? No, I didn't sleep. I was doing research. Research on what? On humans. On what you really are. Cragthor stepped into the galley, lowering his voice. I know about the persistence hunting, the tool use, the omnivorous diet, the fact that your species has eaten almost every other species on your planet. Well, yeah, we're very culinarily adventurous. Marcus set down the knife and wiped his hands. Is that what this is about? You're worried because humans have diverse dietary habits? I'm not worried. I'm simply aware. Aware that I might what? Cook you? Marcus laughed, but Cragthor didn't join in. The laugh faded. Oh, wow, you're serious. Crag, buddy, I'm not going to cook you. How do I know that? Because you're a person? With thoughts and feelings? And also my crewmate? Marcus looked genuinely distressed now. I know I talk about cooking a lot, but I only cook non-sentient animals. That's like a A pretty hard line for me. But you've thought about it, Crag Thor pressed. You've wondered. You said so yourself. You're curious about different anatomies, different preparation methods. Yeah, from an academic perspective. Like, I also wonder how Grex's species reproduces, but that doesn't mean I'm planning to study it firsthand. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. Look, I think there's been a misunderstanding here. Has there? Cragthor gestured at the knife collection. You sharpen your blades every night. You discuss anatomy with alarming detail. You talk about using every part of the animal. You make eye contact while describing butchering techniques. Because I'm passionate about my job, and the eye contact thing is just being polite. Marcus's voice rose slightly. I thought we were having nice conversations about cooking. They stared at each other for a long moment. Marcus grabbed a pot from the stove. Okay, you know what? I was making bone broth. It's been simmering for hours. You want to know why I make bone broth? Because it's nutritious and delicious and uses parts of the animal that would otherwise go to waste. It's about respect for the ingredients and making sure nothing dies in vain. He labeled some into a bowl and pushed it toward Cragthor. Here, try it. It's just soup. Normal, non-threatening soup made by a normal, non-threatening cook who just really likes his job. Cragthor looked at the bowl suspiciously. It's not poisoned, Marcus said, exasperated. Why would I poison you? You're not even bothering anyone. Well, except for the constant bragging, but that's more annoying than threatening. I don't brag. I simply state facts about my accomplishments. You told us about your 248 confirmed kills 17 times last week. 18, Cragthor corrected automatically, then caught himself. That's not the point. Then what is the point? Marcus leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Because from where I'm standing, you've decided I'm some kind of threat based on the fact that I'm good at my job and enjoy talking about it. Which, for the record, is pretty insulting. Cragthor's scales shifted colors, somewhere between aggressive green and uncertain yellow. You asked me how my species would taste. No, I wondered aloud about theoretical cooking methods for different physiologies. There's a difference, Marcus sighed. Look, I get it, humans are weird, we make things complicated, but I promise you I am not sizing you up like a butcher sizes up livestock. You're my crewmate, I make you food because that's what I do. I take care of people by feeding them. The spicy food, Cragthor said weakly. You were trying to hurt me. I literally warned you it was spicy, multiple times. You're the one who kept insisting you could handle it. Marcus threw his hands up. That was your pride, not my malice. Cragthor opened his mouth, then closed it again. He thought about the last few days, about the conversations he'd replayed in his mind at 3 a.m. When he looked at them without sleep deprivation and paranoia, they did seem significantly less threatening. So, he said slowly, when you talk about hunting trips and using every part of the animal, I'm talking about actual hunting, for actual animals, the non-sentient kind. Marcus picked up his knife again, then seemed to think better of it and set it back down. I grew up in rural Montana. Hunting and fishing were normal parts of life. It's about sustainability and connection to food sources, not about being a serial killer. And the knife collection? Professional tools. Would you question why a mechanic has multiple wrenches? Marcus gestured at his pristine galley. I'm a cook, Crag. A really good cook who takes his work seriously. That's literally all this is. Cragthor felt something crumbling inside him. It might have been his dignity. I see. Do you, though? Marcus studied him carefully. Because you look like you've been awake for 30 hours and possibly having a breakdown. Warriors don't have breakdowns. Sure they don't. Marcus ladled out another bowl of broth and pushed it across. Drink this. You'll feel better. And maybe get some sleep. We have dinner tonight, remember? I'm making something special. What kind of special? Cragthor asked, unable to help himself. Pot roast. Very traditional, very non-threatening. Zero psychological warfare involved. Cragthor picked up the bowl of broth. It smelled good. It probably wasn't poisoned. Marcus had had countless opportunities to poison him if that was the goal. For what it's worth, Marcus added quietly, I'm sorry I freaked you out. I genuinely didn't mean to. I just like talking about cooking, and sometimes I forget that not everyone finds endless discussions about knife maintenance as fascinating as I do. It's fine, Cragthor muttered. I may have overreacted. May have? I did overreact. The words tasted like defeat. I apologize for accusing you of wanting to cook me. Apology accepted. Marcus smiled, and this time it just looked friendly. No hidden menace, no unspoken threats. Just a guy who liked his job. Now drink your broth and go to bed. You look like death. Cragthor drank the broth. It was excellent, warming him from the inside. He stood to leave, then paused at the doorway. Marcus? Yeah. Hypothetically speaking, if you did have to cook something my size, how would you do it? Marcus stared at him. Are we doing this again? No, I'm just curious. Professionally. Low and slow, Marcus said with a sigh. Probably a marinade to tenderize the scales, then braising to break down the muscle fibers, maybe 12 hours at low heat, but again, not planning to do this. Right, of course. Just curious. Cragthor fled before he could embarrass himself further. Behind him, Marcus returned to his butchering, shaking his head and muttering something about warriors and weird hang-ups about food. Captain Ven found Cragthor in his quarters 6 hours later, staring at the ceiling with the haunted look of someone who'd seen too much. All right, she said, perching on his desk. Marcus told me you accused him of planning to eat you. Want to explain? I'd rather not. Too bad. We're doing this. Ven folded her wings. Crag, you've been on this ship for 3 months. In that time you've bragged constantly about being fearless. So the crew decided to mess with you a little. Cragthor sat up slowly. Mess with me? Marcus is harmless. Literally the least threatening human I've ever met. He once cried because we had to euthanize a sick plant in the hydroponics bay. Ven's beak curved in what might have been a smile. But you kept going on about how humans were weak and you feared nothing, so we thought it'd be funny to see if you'd spook yourself. You were testing me. We were trying to get you to shut up about your kill count, honestly. The fact that you spiraled this hard is just a bonus. Ven's expression softened slightly. Look, the point isn't that Marcus is scary. The point is that fear isn't about actual danger, it's about the unknown. You've never encountered humans in combat, so you had no framework for understanding them. That made them unpredictable, and unpredictable is scary. Cragthor's scales flushed dark purple with embarrassment. So this whole time, you were being pranked by a merchant crew who are very tired of hearing about the Battle of Vraxis 4. Ven stood. But here's the thing, Crag. You admitted you were scared. That actually takes courage. Real warriors aren't fearless. They're people who do their jobs despite being afraid. You just learned that lesson the hard way, via soup and ghost peppers. I feel like an idiot. Good. Character growth. Ven headed for the door. Now come to dinner. Marcus made pot roast, and if you don't show up, he'll think you're still scared of him. The poor guy's genuinely worried he traumatized you. Dinner that evening was surprisingly pleasant. The pot roast was incredible, and Marcus had clearly gone out of his way to make everything as non-threatening as possible. There were no knives visible, no discussions of anatomy, just good food and better company. So, Marcus said cautiously, passing Cragthor the gravy boat. We're okay, right? No more worrying about me turning you into soup? We're okay, Cragthor confirmed, and meant it. I apologize again for my behavior. It was unbecoming of a warrior. Nah, it's fine. I asked Pip about Draxian culture. You guys don't really do psychological warfare, do you? It's all very straightforward, honor-based combat. That's correct. Yeah, humans are the opposite. We're sneaky and weird, and we'll mess with your head if we think it's funny, Marcus grinned. Honestly, though, I'm kind of impressed. You went 3 days thinking I might murder you and still showed up to meals. That's commitment. Or stupidity, Grex burbled. Little of both, Pip agreed. Cragthor found himself actually laughing. It felt strange. Good, but strange.